Fear is one of the most universal emotions every human being experiences, yet it often becomes the invisible barrier that holds people back from living the life they truly desire. To face fear head-on and reclaim your power, you must first understand that fear is not a signal to stop, but a signal to prepare, to grow, and to move forward. Most people misinterpret fear as a wall that cannot be broken through, when in reality it is more like a curtain, thin, temporary, and removable once you take that step of courage. When you confront fear directly, rather than running from it, you begin to dissolve its control over your mind and your decisions. Think about the moments in life when fear gripped you tightly, the fear of failure, rejection, embarrassment, or even success itself. What you'll realize when you look back is that many of those fears never turned into reality. Yet they stopped you, paralyzed you, and kept you from stepping into opportunities that could have changed your life. Facing fear head-on requires you to shift from asking, "What if it goes wrong?" to "What if this is exactly what I need to grow?" That simple reframing can alter how you perceive challenges and give you the courage to take action. The act of facing fear is like flexing a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you become. In the beginning, your instinct may be to retreat. The mind will throw excuses at you, telling you to wait until the perfect time to gather more information, to avoid risks at all costs. But there is no perfect time, and hesitation only amplifies fear. Power comes from stepping forward despite the trembling hands, the racing heartbeat, and the uncertainty. Every time you push through fear, you weaken its grip, and you send a message to your subconscious mind that you are stronger than the illusion that tries to hold you back. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act in spite of it. Those who accomplish great things are not fearless. They simply refuse to allow fear to dictate their choices. When you stand up and face what scares you, you give yourself permission to grow beyond your comfort zone. Fear is often nothing more than false evidence appearing real. Once you confront it, you see that it was never as big as your mind made it out to be. Facing fear head-on also requires honesty with yourself. Sometimes fear masks itself as procrastination, perfectionism, or even anger. You might tell yourself you're not ready, that you need more time, or that others will judge you. These are just protective layers fear uses to disguise its presence. By naming your fear, by saying out loud, "I am afraid of failing," or "I am afraid of being rejected," you strip it of some of its power. Once identified, you can challenge it with evidence of your capabilities, your resilience, and your past victories. Another powerful way to reclaim your power from fear is to visualize the version of yourself on the other side of it. Imagine the strength, the confidence, and the freedom you'll feel once you do the thing you are afraid of. Instead of replaying the worst-case scenario in your head, create a vivid mental picture of success, of pride, and of growth. Your brain cannot easily distinguish between imagined success and real experience, so by rehearsing courage in your mind, you prime yourself to carry it out in reality. Fear thrives in darkness. It grows when left unchallenged, but once you step into the light of action, it begins to shrink. The moment you make the call, walk on stage, launch the project, or speak your truth, you feel an immediate shift. The weight begins to lift, and you realize that the monster wasn't as terrifying as you thought. That first step doesn't eliminate fear forever, but it weakens it and gives you the strength to face the next challenge with more confidence. Ultimately, facing fear head-on is about choosing freedom over bondage. It is about reclaiming the power you unknowingly gave away to doubt and hesitation. Every human being has fear, but not every human being allows it to dictate their destiny. You have the ability to stand up, to walk forward, and to face the very thing that intimidates you. Each act of courage builds a foundation of inner strength that fear cannot penetrate. And when you learn to meet fear with action, you'll discover that the life you dream of is waiting just beyond the barrier you thought you could never cross. Fear thrives in the absence of action. The longer you wait, the more your imagination magnifies the danger, the obstacles, and the potential for failure. That's why action is the true antidote to fear. You cannot think your way out of fear. You must move your way through it. Every step forward, no matter how small, begins to dismantle the fear that once seemed overwhelming. The moment you decide to act, fear starts to lose its grip because it cannot coexist with decisive movement. When you take action, you interrupt the endless cycle of overthinking that feeds anxiety. Most people get trapped in their minds, replaying negative scenarios and allowing hesitation to grow stronger with each passing second. But fear is not defeated in thought, it is conquered in doing. Imagine standing at the edge of a cold pool, hesitant to jump in. The anticipation, the waiting, the imagining of how freezing the water will feel. That is where fear multiplies. Yet the instant you dive, the fear vanishes. Action dissolves the illusion because it brings reality into play, and reality is rarely as terrifying as imagination makes it. The beauty of action is that it builds momentum. Once you move, even if it's just a tiny step, your brain shifts focus from worry to progress. That progress creates a sense of achievement, no matter how small, and achievement breeds confidence. Confidence then reduces fear, encouraging you to take even bolder steps. It becomes a cycle. Action leads to courage, courage leads to more action, and fear gradually becomes weaker until it no longer controls you. Think about some of the greatest success stories in history. They are not tales of people who never felt fear. They are stories of individuals who acted despite the trembling, despite the doubt, despite the risks. They understood that fear could only be conquered by stepping forward. Consider the entrepreneur who launches a business without knowing if it will succeed, or the speaker who delivers a message despite stage fright. Each act of courage comes from the understanding that inaction guarantees failure, while action opens the door to possibility. Taking action also rewires your brain. Neuroscience shows that when you face a challenge repeatedly, your brain adapts, building new pathways that make it easier the next time. Fear often comes from the unknown, but action turns the unknown into experience, and experience replaces fear with familiarity. The more you act, the more your comfort zone expands, and what once terrified you becomes something you can do almost effortlessly. Many people believe they must wait until they feel ready before they act, but readiness is an illusion. Action creates readiness, not the other way around. Waiting to feel completely confident before you take the leap is a trap that keeps you stuck indefinitely. The truth is, confidence is born from action. You prove to yourself through experience that you can survive, adapt, and thrive. Each time you move, you collect evidence that you are capable, and that evidence begins to silence fear's voice. It's also important to recognize that action does not have to be grand or perfect to be effective. Small steps carry immense power. Writing the first page of a book, making the first phone call, taking the first step on a stage. All of these may feel insignificant in the moment, but they are monumental because they break the barrier of paralysis. Fear thrives in stillness, but once motion begins, fear cannot keep up. Action also builds resilience. When you act, sometimes you succeed, and sometimes you stumble. Both outcomes are valuable because success shows you what works, and setbacks teach you what doesn't. Either way, you grow. Fear, on the other hand, leaves you stuck in limbo, learning nothing, experiencing nothing, and gaining nothing. Taking action is always a win because even in failure, you gain wisdom and strength that fear can never take from you. Ultimately, the most effective way to neutralize fear is to step into it. No amount of waiting, planning, or wishing will ever eliminate the discomfort you feel before doing something new or challenging. But action transforms discomfort into courage. The moment you act, you reclaim control from fear. Instead of being a prisoner of your thoughts, you become the author of your future. And every time you choose action over hesitation, you reinforce the truth that fear has no real power unless you allow it. Fear often feels like an immovable mountain, but at its core, it is built on thoughts, beliefs, and mental patterns that can be changed. When you begin rewiring your mindset, you realize fear is not an external force controlling you. It's an internal story you've been telling yourself. Turning fear into fuel starts with shifting your perception. Instead of seeing fear as an obstacle, you can choose to see it as a sign that growth and transformation are waiting on the other side. The presence of fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're standing at the edge of expansion. The human brain is designed to protect you. It evolved to keep you safe from danger, which is why fear shows up so quickly. But in the modern world, most fears are not life-threatening, they're psychological. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of rejection. These are products of the mind, and because they're mental creations, they can be reframed. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm afraid of failing," you can shift it to, "I'm about to learn something valuable, no matter the outcome." This simple reframe transforms fear from something paralyzing into something energizing. Rewiring your mindset also involves questioning the truth of your fears. Ask yourself, is this fear based on facts, or is it based on assumptions? More often than not, you'll find that fear is exaggerated, blown out of proportion by your imagination. The brain tends to amplify worst-case scenarios because it wants to prepare you for danger. But when you challenge those thoughts with logic and evidence, the fear starts to shrink. For example, if you're afraid of speaking in public, your mind might tell you, "Everyone will laugh at me." But when you examine the truth, you realize most people in the audience want you to succeed. They're not waiting for you to fail. That shift in perspective reduces fear's intensity and gives you room to act with more confidence. Another way to rewire your mindset is to use fear as a compass. Instead of running from it, ask yourself what the fear is pointing you toward. Often, the very thing you're most afraid of is the thing that will help you grow the most. If you fear starting a business, it may be because deep down, you know it will push you toward independence and growth. If you fear having a difficult conversation, it may be because it will challenge you to become more authentic and assertive. In this way, fear is not the enemy. It is a guide showing you where your greatest opportunities for transformation lie. Turning fear into fuel also requires embracing discomfort. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable, but discomfort is the soil where growth is planted. When you step into uncomfortable situations, your brain adapts, your resilience grows, and your confidence expands. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid, so I'll stop," you learn to say, "I'm afraid, which means I'm stretching myself." This mental shift allows you to harness fear as energy rather than letting it drain you. Visualization is another powerful tool for rewiring the mind. Instead of replaying fearful outcomes, imagine yourself succeeding. Picture the joy, pride, and strength you'll feel when you face the challenge and come out stronger. The brain responds to imagined experiences as if they were real, which means the more you rehearse positive outcomes, the more natural and achievable they begin to feel. Over time, this rewiring weakens fear-based thoughts and strengthens confidence-based beliefs. Gratitude can also play a role in transforming fear into fuel. When you focus on what you're thankful for, you train your mind to shift from scarcity to abundance. Fear thrives on scarcity. It tells you that you don't have enough time, enough skill, enough courage. Gratitude, however, reminds you of what you already have and what you've already overcome. That sense of abundance creates inner strength, which reduces fear and empowers action. At its core, rewiring your mindset is about choosing to take control of your inner dialogue. Fear will always whisper doubts, but you have the power to decide whether to accept them or to replace them with empowering beliefs. Every time you shift your thoughts from "I can't" to "I'll try," or from "I'm not ready" to "I'm learning as I go, you weaken the chains of fear and strengthen your capacity for courage. Over time, the stories you tell yourself reshape your reality. When you commit to transforming the way you think, fear no longer holds you back. It becomes the fuel that drives you forward. Instead of stopping at the edge of fear, you see it as a green light that says, "This is where growth begins." And once you master that shift, fear no longer controls your destiny. You do. Fear often convinces us that courage must come in giant, dramatic leaps. We imagine heroes charging into battle, leaders making bold declarations, or individuals taking massive risks without hesitation. But in reality, courage is rarely about one huge, life-altering action. More often, it is built through a series of small steps that gradually strengthen confidence and weaken fear. When you focus on small, consistent actions, you create momentum, and momentum is what transforms uncertainty into unshakable self-belief. Think about the first time you learned to ride a bicycle. You didn't start by racing down a steep hill. You began with short, wobbly attempts, falling, getting back up, and trying again. Each small effort built skill and confidence until one day you no longer needed training wheels. Overcoming fear works the same way. You don't need to leap straight into the scariest version of your challenge. Instead, take a small, manageable step and then another. Each step chips away at fear's power while proving to yourself that you are capable. The beauty of small steps is that they create evidence. Fear thrives on doubt and uncertainty, whispering that you're not ready, not good enough, or destined to fail. But when you take small actions, you gather proof that contradicts those lies. If you're afraid of public speaking, your first step might be sharing your thoughts in a small group. Once you see you survived that, your confidence grows. Then you might volunteer to speak in front of a slightly larger audience. Eventually, you'll find yourself addressing a room full of people with far less fear than you ever imagined possible. Each step provides undeniable evidence that you are stronger than the fear that once controlled you. Another powerful aspect of small steps is that they reduce overwhelm. When you look at fear as one massive obstacle, it can feel impossible to overcome. But when you break it down into bite-sized actions, it suddenly becomes manageable. For instance, if your fear is starting a business, you don't need to launch everything at once. Your first step could be researching your market. The next step might be drafting a simple business plan. The next, reaching out to one potential customer. Each small action brings you closer to your goal without allowing fear to paralyze you with the weight of the entire journey. Courage built through small steps also creates resilience. You begin to realize that setbacks are not failures, but part of the process. When one small step doesn't go as planned, it doesn't destroy your progress because you've already taken many others. The accumulation of small wins and lessons learned gives you a foundation of strength. Over time, you come to see fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal that you're moving in the right direction, stretching beyond your comfort zone. Another reason small steps are so effective is because they build trust with yourself. Fear often makes people doubt their abilities, leaving them stuck in cycles of hesitation. But when you set a small goal and achieve it, you send a message to yourself, "I can do this." That inner trust compounds with each action, creating a deep sense of self-reliance. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you or for the fear to disappear. Instead, you begin to trust that no matter what comes, you have the strength to handle it. Taking small steps also transforms the way you see courage. It stops being something reserved for extraordinary moments and becomes part of your daily life. Courage might look like speaking up in a meeting, reaching out to someone you admire, or even just saying yes when fear tells you to say no. Over time, these acts of everyday bravery build a version of yourself that fear can no longer control. Ultimately, courage is not about one grand gesture. It's about the steady accumulation of small actions that prove fear is not the master of your life. Every time you take a step forward, no matter how small, you take back power. You show fear that it cannot stop you. And with each step, you not only build confidence, you build a future shaped by your courage instead of your hesitation. The truth is, small steps compound into massive change. One day, you'll look back and realize that the mountain of fear you once thought was impossible to climb was conquered one small, steady step at a time. Fear often feels like a solid wall standing between you and the life you want. It appears unshakable, convincing you that it is too powerful to overcome. But the truth is, fear is rarely as real as it seems. More often, it is an illusion, a product of the mind magnifying what could go wrong while ignoring what could go right. When you begin to see fear for what it truly is, you discover that it's more like a shadow than a wall. It looks large and intimidating, but the closer you get to it, the more you realize it has no substance. Breaking free from the illusion of fear means learning to separate fact from fiction, reality from imagination. Most fears are built on what ifs. What if I fail? What if people laugh? What if I lose everything? These questions create anxiety, but they are rooted in possibilities, not facts. Fear is essentially the brain's way of projecting danger into the future, even when none exists in the present. That's why so many fears vanish the moment you face them. Beforehand, your mind creates an exaggerated picture of disaster. But once you step into the situation, you realize the story you told yourself was far scarier than the reality. Breaking free from fear requires awareness. You must be willing to stop and question the stories your mind is feeding you. Instead of automatically believing every fearful thought, pause and ask, is this real, or is this just a possibility? This simple practice shines light on the illusion. Many times you'll realize that fear has no solid ground. It's built entirely on assumptions and exaggerations. By shining truth on those fears, you strip them of their power. Another key to overcoming the illusion of fear is understanding its purpose. Fear exists to protect you. It wants to keep you safe from harm, but safety and growth rarely coexist. If you only listen to fear, you'll stay in your comfort zone forever, never stretching, never discovering what you're capable of. Fear will tell you that staying still is safer, but staying still is also the surest path to regret. When you realize that fear's job is not to guide your future, but simply to alert you, you can acknowledge it without letting it control your choices. Think of fear as a smoke alarm. Sometimes it goes off when there's a real fire, but other times it screams just because you burned a piece of toast. The sound feels urgent either way, but your job is to check. Is there truly a fire, or is this just a false alarm? In life, fear is often just the burnt toast version. A loud signal that feels real but poses no actual danger. Once you recognize that, you stop reacting automatically and start responding with clarity. Breaking free from fear also means shifting your focus. Fear thrives when you focus on failure, rejection, or loss. But when you choose to focus on potential, opportunity, and growth, fear loses its grip. The same energy that fuels fear can fuel excitement if you direct it differently. For example, the nerves you feel before a presentation can either paralyze you with fear or energize you with anticipation. The physiological response is the same. Your heart races, your palms sweat, but the meaning you attach to it changes everything. When you see those sensations as signs of readiness rather than danger, fear turns into fuel. Courage grows when you realize that most of what you fear never actually happens. Studies have shown that the vast majority of worries people carry never become reality, and even when challenges do arise, they are rarely as catastrophic as imagined. You've already survived difficulties before, and you'll survive them again. Remembering your past resilience is another way to expose fear's illusion. If you handled storms before, you can handle them again. Ultimately, breaking free from the illusion of fear is about reclaiming your power from your imagination. Fear may always whisper, but you don't have to believe its every word. You can acknowledge its presence without letting it dictate your actions. The moment you choose to act despite fear, you prove to yourself that the illusion holds no real weight. With each step forward, the shadow of fear becomes smaller and smaller until you realize it was never a wall at all, just smoke and mirrors. Life constantly offers two choices: stay in the safety of your comfort zone or step into the unknown where growth happens. Fear always pushes you toward safety because it promises familiarity and protection. But true fulfillment never comes from staying comfortable. Living beyond limits requires you to consciously choose growth over comfort again and again. This decision doesn't come easily because comfort feels secure while growth feels risky. Yet the moment you realize that comfort is a cage disguised as safety, you begin to understand why courage is essential to living the life you dream of. Choosing growth means accepting that fear will always be present, but it also means refusing to let fear dictate your direction. Comfort might give you temporary ease, but it cannot give you progress. The longer you stay in it, the smaller your world becomes. Growth, on the other hand, stretches you. It forces you to tap into strengths you didn't know you had and to face challenges that bring out your best. Every time you lean toward growth, you expand your capacity, and expansion is what makes life exciting, meaningful, and worthwhile. The problem with comfort is that it tricks you into believing you're safe, but what it really does is slowly drain your potential. When you avoid risk, you also avoid opportunity. When you avoid discomfort, you avoid transformation. People who live their entire lives inside their comfort zones often end up with deep regrets, wishing they had taken chances when they had the chance. Growth requires sacrifice, the sacrifice of ease, of certainty, of immediate gratification. But the reward is freedom, purpose, and self-mastery. Living beyond limits is not about reckless leaps into the unknown. It's about consistent choices that stretch you just a little further each time. Maybe it means speaking your truth when fear tells you to stay quiet. Maybe it means pursuing a dream that others think is impossible. Maybe it means breaking free from a routine that feels safe but unfulfilling. Each of these choices moves you closer to the person you're meant to be, and while they may come with fear, they also come with the promise of growth. Fear will always point you back toward comfort, but comfort will never bring you the satisfaction you're searching for. Think of a seed planted in the soil. If it stays comfortable underground, it will never break through the surface. But by breaking through, by facing the discomfort of pushing against the soil, it transforms into something greater. It becomes a tree. Human growth works the same way. You must break through your own resistance to reach your potential. Living beyond limits also means redefining failure. When you choose growth, failure is not the end. It is simply feedback. Every setback teaches you something valuable and equips you with wisdom for the next step. Comfort protects you from failure, but it also protects you from success. Growth exposes you to both, but it guarantees that you will keep evolving. And the more you evolve, the less power fear has over you. Another crucial part of choosing growth is surrounding yourself with people who challenge and inspire you. Comfort attracts those who settle, who play it safe, who discourage bold dreams. Growth, however, requires allies who push you higher, who remind you of your strength when fear whispers lies. The environment you choose will either reinforce your comfort zone or expand your possibilities. If you want to live beyond limits, seek out those who are already doing so. In the end, life is short, and every moment spent in comfort at the expense of growth is a moment lost. You don't have to take massive risks every day, but you do have to choose progress over stagnation, courage over fear, and growth over comfort. Fear will always be there, but it does not have to control you. When you consistently choose growth, you create a life of meaning, resilience, and limitless potential. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that the boundaries you thought were unbreakable were never real. They were only limits you placed on yourself, and you had the power to break them all along.